Imagine this. You wake up alone in a silent theater. The seats are empty. The stage is bare. Yet a spotlight pins you to the floor as if you were already performing. Somewhere out in the darkness, an unseen audience breathes in perfect unison with your own lungs. You try to recall how you arrived here, but every memory feels rehearsed, like lines written for a character you only pretend to be. Whose script are you following? Who's holding the cue cards of your childhood? Your name, your so-called dreams. The spotlight grows hotter. You feel the urge to speak, to justify why you deserve that beam of light. But no words you find are truly yours. What if every choice you ever made was simply the next compulsory scene in a generational playbill? An unbroken lineage of inherited customs, moral codes, and whispered do's and don'ts. You congratulate yourself on rebellion because you dye your hair, change cities, swipe left, swipe right. But was the possibility space of your defiance already calculated, priced and mulled before you were even born? You celebrate freedom on weekends and drag your chains through Monday traffic. You call it living. Yet under the engine noise of daily life, can you hear the dull clink of something metalline bolted to your psyche? Look closer. The language you think with is centuries old, packed with metaphors your ancestors carved out of goat herds and village fires. The morals you cite were molded by clerics, emperors, ad agencies, strata of ghosts who still move your lips when you say words like duty, family, success. Even your outreach feels secondhand, delivered in pre-assembled hashtags. If authentic feeling is an original painting, you are staring at a poster bought at the gift shop, persuaded it's the masterpiece. Doesn't that sting you at the back of the skull? Consider the rituals you perform without naming them. You shake hands, you blow out birthday candles, you stand when a national anthem plays. Somewhere an ancient tribe once believed smoke carried wishes to the gods, and you still echo that hope over a $9 coconut wax cake. Somewhere, another tribe lifted war banners to drums, and today, stadium speakers pump bass. So you may pledge allegiance to a logo before shouting about victory. Are you living, or are you reenacting? Who choreographs the dance you call your daily routine? And then there's the mirror, that polished oracle that swears your reflection is you. But does the glass ever reveal the carpenter who made its frame? Your body, your posture, your smile, each is a passport photo stamped by culture. Trim your beard, tuck in your shirt, curve your lips just so. The passport control officer is tradition, nodding approval in your mind. What happens if you let your muscles refuse that grin? Do you fear being detained at the border of belonging? So ask yourself right now, without Googling a quote or glancing at a slogan, why live? Is it an instinct older than vocabulary, or another story you were ordered to believe? If the heartbeat thudding in your chest is not entirely yours, if its rhythm follows some ancestral drum, can you honestly claim to be awake? Or are you a dream repeating itself through generations, convinced that the projection on the cave wall is sunrise? Feel the chill crawl up your spine as the theater's darkness thickens. The spotlight dims, and for the first time you feel the weight of silence, not as emptiness, but as possibility. Somewhere beyond these velvet curtains, there may be an exit into uncharted night, a territory where nothing is scripted and every breath is raw, ownerless. But crossing that threshold would cost you the comforts of plot and applause. Would you dare step into a life unprompted, or cling to the safety of lines that guarantee approval? Pause. Listen to the hush between your heartbeats, that flicker of unease you feel. Is it fear, or is it the first pulse of genuine existence straining against the props? Whatever answer you give will reveal whether you're merely repeating an age-old illusion or preparing to dismantle it. Ready or not, the curtain is beginning to tremble, and everything you call living is about to be questioned in ways you never imagined. The curtain quivers, but before it rises on whatever comes next, you must descend. Down a spiral staircase that leads beneath the stage, into the machinery of your own mind. Down here, beneath the creaking floorboards of daily habits, the true architects of your reality sit in shadow. They are older than your name. One wears the mask of Jung's collective unconscious, another the grin of Nietzsche's eternal return. And somewhere in the corner, Schopenhauer pets the blind will that snarls behind every craving. They have been scripting you in whispers so soft you mistook them for private thoughts. Start with Jung. He insists that your personal memories are merely surface ripples on a vast ancestral ocean. Every gesture you enact, stroking a lover's hair, lighting a scented candle, raising a toast, awakens archetypes that predate traffic lights and touch screens. When you dream of falling, you rehearse an ancient fear of sky gods. When you tell a child, everything will be fine, you channel the archetypal mother, even if you doubt your own reassurance. Your individuality, a froth of foam atop waves that rolled here from the Ice Age. How brave do you feel now, knowing your psyche is more echo chamber than command center? Slide over to Nietzsche, pacing back and forth in the gloom. He taps his cane and asks, if the universe is condemned to replay itself endlessly, are you condemned to resuffer these same illusions forever? Your morning commute, your late-night scrolling sessions, your half-meant New Year's resolutions, all looped in an infinite montage. You may bristle at the suggestion. You may cry out for freedom. But Nietzsche leans closer, eyes bright with mischief. Freedom? He asks. Or merely the illusion of novelty stitched onto the same tattered fabric? If existence keeps pressing repeat, then each time you defer your authentic desires, you doom not just this life, but every life in the cycle. The stakes suddenly multiply beyond measure. And then Schopenhauer clears his throat. He offers a single image, a white-knuckled fist clenching nothing but air. That fist is the will. To survive, to possess, to continue at any cost. It hovers underneath every advertisement, every love song, every career ladder. You buy things because the will hungers. You fear death because the will trembles. You gossip not for information, but for the will's cheap thrill of domination. Schopenhauer tells you that consciousness is merely the will looking at itself in a mirror and misrecognizing its own reflection as purpose. How can you see clearly when your very eyesight is energized by the same force that blinds you? But psychology is not only German gloom. Modern neuroscience peeks in, holding up fMRI scans like stained glass windows. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex lights up when you hear beliefs that match your cultural tribe. The anterior insula flares at thoughts that contradict it, passions masquerading as rationality. Meanwhile, dopamine drips into your nucleus accompanies every time social media dings, reinforcing the path of least resistance. Scroll, like, repeat, until your thumbs become prayer beads in the religion of a distraction. Does free will exist where reward pathways have been hijacked by algorithms designed to anticipate you better than you anticipate yourself? Your family enters the basement next. Their voices arrive as echoes. Finish your dinner. Get a real job. Don't embarrass us. Even when they are nowhere near your apartment, the acoustics of childhood reverberate through present-day walls. You call your preferences taste, but 1,000 dinner table conversations salted that taste long before you chose your first menu. You call your moral compass conscience, but it is calibrated by sermons you half slept through on wooden pews. You are less a blank canvas and more a palimpsest, overwritten, but never fully erased. Each new desire is inked to tall-top parchment, still wet with ancestral ink. Pause and notice the claustrophobia growing inside you. You want to blame something. Religion, capitalism, social media, perhaps even evolution itself. But every villain you identify merely hands you back another mirror. Society, after all, is just a macroorganism made of microselves like yours. The system manipulates you because, collectively, you wrote the code for it. A rigged game built by generations of players who preferred certainty to chaos, comfort to authenticity. Now that certainty chokes you like velvet ropes. Yet the most insidious architect is language. Words frame the possibilities of thought, the way steel beams frame a skyscraper, invisible from inside each office cubicle, yet limiting every floor plan. Eskimos have 50 terms for snow. The Himba of Namibia categorize colors differently and literally perceive the rainbow anew. What unseen categories imprison you because English or Mandarin or Spanish cannot name them? When you say "I am sad," you bind a swarm of sensations to one overused label, reducing a meteor shower of subtle emotions to a single gray drizzle. Perhaps the prison bars are carved from alphabet. At this depth, rational objections bubble up. You might argue that awareness of conditioning is itself a form of freedom. True, but awareness without action is a museum tour of chains you never break. You might cite existentialism. Existence precedes essence. But Jean-Paul Sartre's cigarette ash fell onto cafe tables, now wiped clean by tourism boards that monetize his rebellion. Your existential freedom has been commemorated in t-shirt slogans. Is that still revolt or curated nostalgia? The basement grows colder. All lights dim except one bare bulb swinging overhead. Under its sway, you glimpse a riddle. If every neuron, every archetype, every cultural script is part of a deterministic mosaic, where does authentic desire reside? Not a borrowed wish, not a parental hope, not a market-tested fantasy, but a feral, incandescent urge that belongs solely to you. Does such a thing exist? Or would discovering it require tearing down mental scaffolding until the roof caves in? Are you prepared for daylight unfiltered by stained glass? Feel your pulse quicken. That rhythm is older than language, yet it drums inside your ribcage, insisting on significance. Perhaps that insistence itself is the clue, a tremor of raw life pushing against its own constraints. You stand now at the threshold between comprehension and vertigo. One step further, and the solid ground of inherited meaning may crumble into abyss. But without that step, you risk spending the rest of your days as a well-decorated marionette, dancing to scores composed before electricity. So take a breath. The staircase behind you has vanished. There is only forward. Ahead lies a corridor lined with doors labeled by habits you thought were immutable. They unlock from the inside. The question is no longer who built this maze, but will you dare rearrange its walls? The chill in your bones is the knowledge that deeper shadows await, but also the hint that somewhere in that darkness, a seam is loosening, a crack widening. Enough, perhaps, to prise open the iron script and write something that has never been written before. Step onto the street above that basement of archetypes and watch how the invisible gears grind your life into a shape you never consciously approved. You think the pavement is solid, but beneath each concrete slab lies a network of unseen pipes, economic incentives, evolutionary reflexes, algorithmic nudges, pumping instructions into your bloodstream. Their pressure is gentle enough that you call it normal, but it's relentless, and it bends your spine 1 millimeter each day until you are bowed to conventions you can't even name. Start with the small habits that masquerade as harmless. You check your phone before your eyelids have fully opened. Neurochemically, that single swipe floods your synapses with a predict-reward cycle, tailor-made to bypass the effortful reasoning of the prefrontal cortex. The basal ganglia memorize the motion. The default mode network slots the ritual into its loop of familiar self-talk. The hippocampus quietly stamps the experience with a false sense of agency. Multiply that micro-submission by thousands of mornings, and you've surrendered a decade of sunrise wonder to an attention economy that fattens on your compulsions while you claim you're just staying informed. Then magnify the pattern to the scale of society. A city's skyline looks like innovation, but every illuminated logo is financed by aggregate dopamine extractions from millions of wrists flicking in synchronicity. The market monetizes your bias for immediate reward over long-term meaning, so it feeds you hit after hit. Flash sales, push notifications, binge-worthy episodes that blur the boundary between day and night. Soon, circadian rhythms misalign. Cortisol seeps like an acid into your veins. Insomnia blooms. You begin to feel busy, but strangely empty, like a vending machine refilled with the same sugary snack it dispenses. And because everyone around you is equally wired and tired, the malaise passes for adulthood. That's the first invisible consequence: collective burnout, disguised as productivity. Consider politics. You believe you vote for policies, yet the ballot is an audition tape for confirmation bias. Each headline you click trains the availability heuristic to spotlight threats, consistent with your tribe's narrative, and to dim contradictions. Social platforms weaponize that bias. Their ranking algorithms escalate outrage because outrage keeps you scrolling. You end up living in a carnival mirror that stretches your fears and shrinks your empathy. Meanwhile, lobbyists and data scientists collaborate off-stage to adjust the funhouse angles so you feel righteous, even as you're herded into echo chambers. The system survives by polarizing you just enough to paralyze you. That's the second invisible consequence: stalemate advertised as civic engagement. Now zoom into the domestic sphere. At dinner, you raise a glass to freedom of choice, but the wine you pour, the playlist you cue, even the jokes you tell, are curated by recommender engines tuned to your past clicks. Personalization feels intimate, yet erases serendipity. Unpredictability is trimmed away because it doesn't convert to ad revenue. Over time, your mental diet narrows, your imagination atrophies, and your tolerance for ambiguity, seedbed of creativity, wilts like an overwatered plant. You may never notice that you are less curious, because the content keeps you busy with incremental novelty, a new flavor of the same processy thought. That's the third invisible consequence: sameness, wearing costumes of diversity. Look at relationships. Evolution wired your amygdala to scan faces for micro-signals of acceptance. Modern culture hacks that circuitry with follower counts and reaction emojis. The shift is subtle. You begin to value visibility over intimacy. You present highlight reels and call them authenticity. Yet every performative post, vacation beaches, gym mirrors, witty despair, etches a deeper rift between the persona you broadcast and the unfiltered self-trembling backstage. Loneliness metastasizes in crowds of likes, and you soothe it by posting again. That's the fourth invisible consequence: connection metrics, replacing connection. Education? You spent years internalizing that knowledge equals credential equals worth. Tests rewarded rote recall, not critical defiance. So when institutions echo the same myth, work hard, follow rules, retire happy, you rarely question the syllabus. You may rebrand yourself a lifelong learner, but the owl-eyed curiosity of childhood was anesthetized by standardized templates. The result is an obedience muscle so reflexive you mistake it for diligence. That's the fifth invisible consequence: intellectual domestication applauded as diligence. And the planet? You reskill a bottle and feel virtuous, while corporations outsource carbon footprints to factories beyond your line of sight. Cognitive dissonance whispers, you've done your part. The tragedy of the common scales exponentially in a world where billions hold the same comforting illusion. By the time sea levels lap at the harbor's edge, you will call it a once-in-a-century storm. That's the sixth invisible consequence: ecological collapse camouflaged by the language of exception. Notice how each strand intertwines. Dopamine loops entangle with economic incentives, which braid into cultural scripts, which anchor political stalemates, which accelerate planetary stress. The tapestry is so vast and finely woven that pulling one thread seems futile, until you realize the weave tightens every time you shrug. Inertia is not neutral. It is the hidden accelerant of the very patterns that exhaust you. You might object, but I'm aware of these forces. Awareness without disruption is a surveillance camera watching a burglary, but never calling the police. Meanwhile, the thieves grow bolder, because observation without resistance emboldens them. The landlord of tradition counts on your passive insight, adding surcharges to your rent for every epiphany you do not act upon. Feel the walls inch closer. Each passive hour cements neural pathways, entrenches market behaviors, deepens cultural clefts. Delay becomes a vote for the status quo, and the status quo is ravenous. It consumes attention, agency, and air. If you wait until the system's jaws are visible, they will already be around your throat. So the question mutates from philosophical musing to existential deadeye. How many unnoticed consequences can you absorb before the self you might have become is irretrievable? The longer you drift, the more the current strengthens. The more the current strengthens, the smaller your turning radius. Eventually, the horizon narrows to a point, and tradition's illusion becomes not just a cage, but a coffin. Listen again to that faint crack widening in the distance, the sound of a possibility that still survives beneath the noise. It beckons like a fault line, promising either catastrophe or transformation. To approach it will require choices that slice against every invisible incentive engineered to keep you docile. But beyond that fracture lies the chance to breathe air, not yet commodified, to feel time, not yet scheduled. How close are you willing to stand to the fault line before it splits under your feet? Your silence is an answer. Yet even silence accumulates interest, compounding every second you hesitate. Somewhere, the next stage of this script is already loading, but it has no power until you step into its light or walk off the set entirely. And the clock is ticking louder than you think. Begin the mutiny with a single subversive gesture. Refuse to answer on autopilot. When a colleague asks the habitual, "How are you?" do not parrot "fine." Instead, pause long enough for discomfort to bloom. Then offer a truth so precise it startles the air. I feel like a storm looking for its scalancy. That fracture of honesty is small, but its echo dislodges a brick from the wall of scripted civility. Revolutions often begin with silence spoken in the wrong key. Now widen the breach. Audit the rituals of your day, the way a hacker inspects code for backdoors. The alarm that yanks you awake at 6:30, the hour chosen by factory clocks a century ago, can be rewritten. Experiment with waking when your body stirs naturally. The first week, the inertia of artificial schedules will shrink-wrap your brain with guilt. Let it. Guilt is the squeal of bolts loosening. By the second week, you will discover dawn not as a productivity hack, but as unprogrammed time. Light splashing across walls before the marketplace opens its jaws. Guard that light like contraband. Next, sabotage the dopamine economy. Delete one app that profits from your attention, but not your growth. Pick the one whose icon you tap in moments of boredom, because boredom is the portal to imagination, and the app is the lock. Expect withdrawal tremors. Your thumb will hover phantom-like over the empty space where the button used to live. Welcome that phantom. It is proof that the operating system is not merely digital, but neural. Each tremor you endure is a vote for sovereignty over circuitry. Historically, the makers of genuine freedom all practiced radical subtraction. Diogenes abandoned the marketplace for a barrel, and, legend says, told Alexander the Great to step out of his sunlight. In doing so, he redrew the map of power, the beggars dictating terms to the king. Later, Zen master Ikkyu slipped out of monastic hierarchies to roam sake shops and brothels, proving that enlightenment does not require polished floors or intuitive sense, but a mind unhandcuffed to rules. More recently, civil rights activists staged sit-ins that forced oppressive systems to reveal their violence in public daylight. Notice the pattern. The cage becomes visible only when you stop moving the way it expects. You can perform your own sit-in inside language. Identify phrases that smuggle conformity into your mouth. That's just how things are. We've always done it this way. Can't be helped. Place each under linguistic quarantine. Replace I have to with I choose to, and watch obligation mutate into agency. Replace I deserve with I create, and entitlement dissolves into momentum. Words are levers. Shift them millimeters, and the whole psyche tilts. Reshape your physical environment as well. Rearrange furniture so that paths you normally walk on autopilot become new terrain. Eat at the floor instead of the table. Write standing. Shower in darkness once, to teach your senses that routine comfort is optional. These micro-exiles train your nervous system to distinguish true danger from mere unfamiliarity. Every time you step out of a practiced groove, neuroplasticity flickers, like fresh circuits sparking to life. Community is the next battlefield. Escaping a collective illusion alone is difficult because the tribe's gravitational pull masquerades as love. Seek accomplices who value questions over conclusions. Host a weekly contradiction salon where each participant must defend the exact opposite of their deepest belief. The aim is not conversion, but the muscular stretch of perspective. Such play loosens ideological scar tissue, making space for authentic alliance rather than echo chamber trust. Money, the bloodstream of culture, must also be hacked. Run a forensic audit on every purchase for the past month, not just totals, but motives. Did you buy that designer mug to savor coffee, or to cosplay an identity sold by influencers? If the latter, enact a 30-day fast from non-essential spending. Redirect the saved currency into something algorithmic ads never predict. Maybe a class in calligraphy, or seeds for a guerrilla garden on an abandoned lot. Capital re-aimed becomes chisel, carving cracks in the concrete narrative of consumerism. Confront work. Corporations speak the language of output. Answer them in the dialect of mastery. Identify one skill within your role that still feels alive, something that sparks curiosity rather than drains it. Pour disproportionate attention into that skill until it glows unmistakably brighter than your other tasks. The system may reward you, ignore you, or punish you. All three outcomes confirm that you are steering, not drifting. If punishment comes, treat it as data that your trajectory threatens the norm, evidence of progress. Ritualize reflection. Each night, jot 3 moments when you disobeyed inherited momentum, no matter how trivial. Maybe you chose conversation over scrolling, or noticed the ski instead of traffic lights. Over weeks, the list becomes a cartography of reclamation. You will see freedom growing like moss in the cracks you opened. And when despair whispers that change is negligible, the map will answer with coordinates of every small escape. Yet rebellion is incomplete until it addresses the body, the oldest archive of programming. Practice a movement discipline that prizes internal sensation over external form. Tai Chi, ecstatic dance, Feldenkrais. These arts treat the organism as question, not trophy. They dissolve postures shaped by classrooms and office chairs inviting a vertebral dialogue with gravity. A body that moves unscripted teaches the mind to think unscripted. Finally, cultivate absurd gratitude. Thank the rain for ruining your picnic. Thank the power outage for sending you to candlelight. Thank even the algorithm that stalks you. Its relentless targeting reminds you that you are worth hunting. Gratitude, when detached from convenience, is rebellion against the culture of deficiency. It transforms every setback into raw material for autonomy. Will all this unshackle you completely? Probably not. Traditions are hydras. Cut one head and another sprouts. But each cut buys space. Each pause grows silence. Each honest sentence lengthens the distance between your pulse and the puppeteer's strings. Accumulate those fractions. One day, you may turn around and notice the cage far behind you, shrinking to a dot, still shouting its instructions, but no longer audible over the sound of your own unmediated breath. The day arrives when every borrowed narrative finally fractures, quietly, like ice thinning underfoot. At first you mistake the sound for wind, traffic, a neighbor's TV. But then the crack widens, and you recognize it as your own voice, splintering free of its echo. In that moment, you learn the secret no doctrine, brand, or lineage dares confess. Life does not need a meaning. It is the meaning. And tradition, every creed, routine, and algorithm, has merely been an explanatory subtitle running beneath a film that never asked for translation. Your epiphany doesn't descend like a thunderbolt. It unfolds like unblinking daylight after a lifetime of flickering bulbs. You realize that searching for purpose is itself a legacy you inherited from ancestors who feared the cosmic silence. They fashioned gods, manifest destinies, 5-year plans, anything to convert raw existence into a story with a goal. But goals are coordinates on maps that other people drew. Tear up the cartography, and something astonishing happens. Directions vanish, yet the terrain remains lush and tices, awaiting footprints that will never be repeated. You stand in that wilderness, heart pounding not from fear, but from the unfamiliar spaciousness of agency. No prompts, no cues, just pulse and possibility. You ask the question that once haunted you, why live? And for the first time it dissolves instead of echoes. Why does a star burn? Why does water fall? No reason. Because. And the absence of reason is not void. It is plenitude. Meaning was too narrow a vessel for the torrent of being. From this height, you can finally see tradition for what it is. A staircase built to help generations climb out of chaos, now so worn by footprints that people mistake the staircase for the destination. You may still choose to step on it. Rituals can comfort. Languages can sing. But you do so consciously, knowing the stairs are optional and the sky exists with or without them. Freedom is not fleeing the theater. It is realizing you can exit and re-enter at will. Invent roles, rewrite endings, or sit with the spotlight off, in perfect, undefended silence. And what of the will that Schopenhauer claimed enslaves you? You discover its truer nature. It is not a fist but an open hand, not a tyrant but a current. When unexamined, it drags you downstream among debris. When met head-on, it becomes propulsion for directions no compass can chart. The will is raw energy. Direction is yours alone to author. Likewise, Nietzsche's eternal return no longer threatens you with endless repetition. Infinite cycles mean infinite opportunities to improvise. Each moment recurves, but you are no longer the same node in the loop. Awareness adds a new dimension. The spiral ascends. Eternity becomes not a prison, but an echo chamber in which originality can resonate forever. The archetypes that Jung described still inhabit you, but now they are collaborators, not puppeteers. When the warrior archetype surges, you wield its courage without inheriting its aggression. When the lover stirs, you taste devotion without drowning in possessiveness. The collective unconscious turns from master script to vast library, and you, the awakened librarian, choose which myth to read, which to shelve, and which blank pages to write anew. The world around you does not miraculously transform. Deadlines persist, bills arrive, politics howl. Yet their gravitational pull weakens because you no longer orbit them for validation. You engage or disengage by volition, not reflex. Even suffering changes flavor. It stings, but it does not define you. Pain becomes weather, felt fully, watched pass. Joy, too, loses its addictive edge and becomes a breeze you relish without clutching. People notice. Some feel threatened. Autonomy exposes their own shackles. Others feel inspired. Freedom is contagious. You offer no sermons, just presence, an example of living unscripted. The most radical activism you can perform is to be visibly, audibly unprogrammed, because every system depends on the rumor that escape is impossible. As dusk pools around you, remember the theater of your beginning, the empty seats, the oppressive spotlight. Walk back through its doors someday if you like, but do it on your own terms. Maybe you'll deliver a soliloquy no audience expects, or maybe you'll dismantle the stage plank by plank and carry the wood outside to build a bonfire where strangers can gather without rolls or rows. Let ash drift into night's anonymity. Let stories rise from embers without needing to petrify into scripture. Finally, place your hand on your chest. Feel that rhythm. It is not a drumbeat demanding purpose. It is a metronome of presence, measuring nothing but now. Each pulse says, you are, you are, you are. And that, stripped of every inherited adjective, is sufficient. Existence is the ultimate improvisation, and you, no longer a character but the playwright, have the last eternal line. I choose this unreasoning aliveness. When the words fade, when even choice feels like too much grammar, fall into pure breath. Beyond language, beyond tradition, there is only the raw sensory fact of being. Wordless, boundless, quicksilver. Live there, and illusion becomes just another optional costume in an infinite wardrobe. The stage lights dim, not into darkness, but into the vast star-hung quiet where reality doesn't need permission to shine.